Hi everyone, and welcome to the GCS Connect Leaders series. Today we're talking to Tanya Thomas of GDS, who's the Chief Sales Officer. Great chat. GDS is a fast-growing virtual events business that GCS is currently working with, and she's got a lot of really great ideas and passion about the business, about how they're growing. They've changed a lot in the last 12 months since COVID, and moved to an entirely virtual platform, which is really exciting. And she talks a lot about that and how you communicate with customers and with your employees in order to make sure the business grows and drives in the right direction. Really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure you'll be interested to find out more about the business. So here we go. Here's Tanya Thomas from GDS.
Hi there, Tanya. How are you?
Good. How are you, David?
Very well, very well. I'm in a rainy Reading today, and you're in sunny Miami. I'm very jealous.
I am. It's actually not that sunny today, but very, very humid. So maybe a storm coming.
Yeah, there is. It does happen. When I've been to Florida, you kind of think it's going to be sunny all the time, but the rain there is unlike any rain you've ever seen, isn't it? It's just like in the shower.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and then it gets really hot and goes away again, doesn't it? It's just very strange.
Last for long. You just have to wait it out. But yeah. Certainly it's moody today.
Well, I took my daughter. It's like end of May. Just so if you're listening to this in the future, it's end of May. I took my daughter to have a sandwich at lunch in our local cafe because she had the afternoon off, and we were sat there like in our big coats, rain happening outside because you can't go inside.
You can't yet. Soon you'll be going inside, right?
Hopefully, yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to get inside out of the cold. Fantastic. But as I said from the intro, it's great. We've got Tanya here, who's the Chief Sales Officer from GDS, which is a really exciting virtual events business, which we'll obviously find out more in this conversation. 20 years experience in the industry. Someone that I've worked with about a decade ago when you were working for the Business Magazine. So you're an old friend of GCS. And it's GCS and GDS, which I think is beautiful. So we're here talking today.
Aligned.
That's right. Yeah. Great name, good name. That is, yeah. So Tanya, it's great to have you on the show. You're really exciting to kind of hear about the business, but just want to give us a bit of a background about you, about your role, what you do, and a little bit of understanding about GDS because there's so much interesting stuff that you guys are doing at the moment.
Sure. So I started with GDS in 2018. Actually as CEO based out of the UK.
Yeah.
So our head office is down in Bristol in the UK. And at that stage, we were 80% physical events. So the shape of our events, we had two product portfolios, a summit portfolio, which is senior level exec, thought leadership, project intelligence matched, bringing together a buyer and seller. And we had another product portfolio called Meet the Boss, which were virtual and live roundtable, intimate hosted breakfasts and dinners. But we did also have a digital platform.
Sure.
And the business is going great guns, owned and led by Spencer Green, who's our chairman. He started the business 27 years ago.
Cool.
Has gone from strength to strength. He started in publishing, then moved entirely into the summits business model. And then what happened when we came towards, so we built the business, restructured, we have 80% of our revenue actually that comes out of the States.
Sure.
And what happened when COVID hit was that we made the decision, or I was asked to come out to the US and focus entirely on scaling and transitioning our US business.
Sure.
And Spencer was at the helm, driving from a UK head office perspective. And we have completely transformed the business through very difficult times. It's been the most amazing piece of work and lots of learning for me individually, but also as a business. So we've moved from, as I said, 80% physical events to 100% digital first business and will remain so. We can talk a bit more about why that is, but it's been a really exciting journey. And we're actually currently we're trading 76% up on pre-COVID revenue levels, which is phenomenal. So the
Yeah,
position
particularly at
never
the time.
been better. Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of businesses that we speak to that are doing that. So I guess for yourself, you know, this transformation was driven by COVID entirely. What was in your mind already? Did you think this sort of happen, or is it very much a March 2020 thing? Right, we've got to change.
I think the transition was beginning, and we certainly had it in our scope for the future. But I think alongside almost every business, they have had to accelerate, you know, in a pretty SOS urgent way how they move into the digital era. So for us, it was a trigger to get it done immediately, as opposed to following a more normal commercial trajectory, which is both exciting and scary all in one go.
Yeah, and I actually spoke to an events business the other day that almost just shut down, just said, look, you know, we'll wait. And you guys obviously decided not to do that. You know, was that an option? Was it like, well, you know, let's just give it up? You know, I guess that's as a lead, you have to make that decision, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, the options were to tread water and try and wait it out. Yeah. Or kind of stall trading, which really wasn't an option, or to go 100% into a new world and take the business in a new direction, which has required, you know, a huge amount of investment from a resource perspective, financially, in terms of building our new product portfolios and our platform, but also in the way that the business has been led and transitioned. And we went for that option, which was a risk, you know, there's no doubt about it. You know, it could have gone either way in many respects. But what's been fascinating about the move for me is that rather than a lot of our competitors in their let's wait for physical to come back decision, have tried to create something temporary and tactical where they could squeeze a physical experience into a digital environment. In the shape of VC, in the shape of webinar, in the shape of kind of gluing together bits and pieces of internal platform that might already be alive. And what the biggest difference, I believe, in terms of the way that GDS responded was we have always been an outcomes-led business. Right, so what outcomes are we trying to achieve? What outcomes are our sponsors, customers trying to achieve, and what outcomes do our attendees need? So we took that same operating model and applied it to our transformation, which was rather than trying to replicate physical and digital world, which does not work. In our experience and from our customers' experience, we know that that doesn't work. We started with outcomes in mind. So we started with the end and said, what do we want our attendee, regardless of whether they're a sponsor or a delegate, to do, think, feel, and say as a result of attending one of our digital engagements? And then we built the model back, and we built the model backwards. So that creates an entirely different environment.
Because people are getting the kind of the benefit that they want, rather than this would have been much better if I was doing it face to face.
Exactly. And bizarrely, and I would never have thought this ahead of the changes, but where we've got to now, David, is that through the augmented reality experience that we've created, my experience as an attendee, actually on our platform, is that I feel I am more there in the digital environment than I ever did physically. I think the reason for that is that you remove the hierarchy of extrovert and introvert behavior, for one. So psychology involved, everybody is balanced, and we are able to better curate people's engagement and involvement on the platform. Whereas physically, what you'll find in all groups, whether it's a summit or a dinner party, physically the extroverts will always lead and dominate. But actually the thinkers and the strategy builders and the innovators may be part of the introvert set, which we didn't hear from so much. So the quality of our content's improved hugely.
That's right. And I guess, and there's always a big thing about these summits is high levels of alcohol, and which is obviously good, the social thing, but probably you have more intelligent conversations and more detailed conversations in a shorter space of time with a wider kind of global audience. I mean, I was on this RDK summit the other day, as I was speaking to you about, which was 500 people from everywhere in the world.
Yes.
Coming together to talk about this particular product, whereas before maybe it would have cost everyone about 10 grand to get to Philadelphia to go to the Comcast offices or Las Vegas or whatever, and not as many people would have attended, would they?
No, that's right. And I think the other thing that we have seen and we saw immediately is the level of attendee went up. So C-suite, of Fortune 500 organizations, that their return on their time investment is actually the most important thing. And there is no draw at that level. There's no incentive to come to the Four Seasons. They not interested at all. The important thing for them is the return on their time investment and being involved in the right groups and actually creating and help to co-create an environment of learning. So the quality of our audiences went up. And we have managed to, in quite creative ways, replicate some of that. The only physical loss that I can see in our digital landscapes is that kind of bar conversation. But to be honest with you, the major bosses, so the C-suite, were never part of those conversations anyway.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It was always about the business side and the learning and like I said, the innovation, the thinking, the strategy. But I think it's really interesting. So for me, what's fascinating is that I've spoken to a lot of people in the last 12 months that have adapted and survived. But then we talk about thriving, and obviously GDS is more than survived; it's thriving. And looking back in your career, obviously as a leader, you've obviously had to deal with many challenges. Was this the biggest challenge you've ever dealt with? Was this the one? This was no moment.
By far, absolutely 100%. It was the biggest challenge. It has been the biggest challenge, but equally, it's been the most exciting piece of work I've ever done. I think because the result was unknown. So really, you are moving forward day by day, step by step, conversation by conversation, into an unknown arena. Because you don't have the roadmap, and there is no experience on, these outcomes could range from this catastrophe to this triumph. There was no scale and no range, which was exciting and scary all in one go. But beyond a doubt, this was the most challenging.
So how did you overcome that? I mean, obviously, if you think through that first 2 months, how did you overcome that particular challenge and come out of it, 76% up?
So for me, I moved to the States very early in the pandemic. So for me personally, it was the most important elements of ensuring that we landed, once the decisions were made in terms of our strategy, landing that messaging within the business remotely at that time was the most important thing. And affecting and educating and supporting the people in this business who ultimately would be the ones educating, affecting and influencing our customers was the big piece of work early on. We also actually brought the American offices back into office in July last year, which was super early. But because there was so much going on from a product development perspective and such a sea change in terms of the way we needed to educate our customer base and our universe, we needed to bring people back. We were doing everything remotely, as we've all got very used to, but actually for the commercial teams, there was so much training and development that needed to be done that we brought them back, and we brought them back in as safe an environment as we could possibly create, which worked very well. But that again was another piece of work. Nobody wanted to leave their homes at that point.
That's right. So you had to kind of like sell the benefits of that as well, and
Exactly. There was a fine line there. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, what's really interesting that you talked about a commercial team, and we've talked a lot to a lot of tech people on this business that say, you know, we've had fintech companies, no one's ever coming back to the office.
Yes.
I run a sales-based business myself. So would you say that you feel that that's the best way to keep a sales team focused and working together, is to have them there and working side by side or socially distanced side by side?
Yeah, I think through a crisis, my experience through this crisis has been that it was entirely necessary.
Yeah, okay.
But we had a kind of golden window in which to communicate in the right way to our customer base.
Sure.
And also to grow, to seize the opportunity of what we'd built, and we still are, to realize the opportunity that was presenting itself. We needed pace, and we needed to land quickly, and we needed the messaging particularly to be very consistent across the business. And with our sales organization, we have, from the top of the sales organization who are remote, we have an enterprise accounts team, all the way through sales director, senior BD, SDR. So it's that hierarchy actually that benefits so much from having the experience around them.
Exactly.
The more junior the role, the more necessary, my experience has been through COVID anyway, that they have the right support and human beings around where they can continue their development. Otherwise they tend to just stall until the next formal session.
That's right. Yeah. And then I've been saying it like this, and you're like, no, don't say it like that, say it like this.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
So.
But they don't get to hear, it's like a bit like being in a family, I think, the richness of a functional family anyway, is the grandparents and the parents, the children, the animals, all teaching up and down. And I feel very much that the same experience we see play out on the sales floor.
Yeah, I like that. The sales force as a family is a very good analogy, isn't it? Really,
Exactly.
And including the fallings out and the arguments.
Absolutely, the competition, and the jealousy, but also the celebration. You don't get that on VC quite as well. We tried many ways of celebration when we were totally locked down, which was great but exhausting. Yeah,
that's right. And your strategy is really, with the success you're having, to continue that. I know that we're working with you at the moment, is to really, double down, as it were.
Yeah, we're going to continue on our digital first trajectory. We know that a lot of our competition are waiting for physical to come back, and physical, I'm sure, will come back at some point. My view, though, is that the world has been changed many ways forever, and there's some good change, particularly from the sort of digital enablement point of view. So we will stay in our lane now that we've invested so heavily and have, we're experiencing the results, I suppose, and the return on investment for our customers. There will be a few of our customers who, want to go back to physical. They missed the bar conversation, and we will happily separate from those customers and just continue to move forward in the same vein as we have been the last few months.
And I think it's brave in some ways, isn't it? You have to pick, like you said, your lane and go forward. And I guess in some ways what you're saying is the changes that have been brought about by COVID are permanent in some ways. This is, the world has now changed.
I think some of them are, and I think the reason for that is that some of the aspects, there's been horror and fear and devastation, and absolutely don't underestimate any of that, and have been affected. Myself, we all have in a certain way. But I think some of the realizations that have come out from an economic commercial perspective, certainly for us in this business and for our customers, is that the efficiencies driven by very high standards in a digital environment by far outweigh the small nuances that we're losing from not going back to physical. And I spent time at UBM, so this trade show world has been incredibly affected. Different model from GDS and our summit model, but we know that when trade shows begin to trade again and already are in Asia, there'll be a period of time where attendance will be restricted. So return on investment, potentially, there's going to be a need for either hybrid or for bringing in insurance for those customers to ensure that they're driving the same outcomes as they used to pre-pandemic. So we can also play a role in partnering in the physical world, but not delivering it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting point, isn't it? That whole hybrid model. You know, it's quite easy to do a fully physical model, but it's also quite easy to do a fully virtual model. But actually having people in the room at the same time who are both virtual and physical is actually harder. I've seen that even with our own sales meetings and stuff. It's not, that's almost the most difficult bit, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the one that is the most difficult bit, 100%, and that's the one bit that we've got right. So I'm not a techie person at all. You'll be much more technical than me, but the reason that our platform is so powerful is actually the augmented reality perspective. So we have a physical person in our TV show. It's like a TV show, but you enter, but you enter via Zoom. So there are human beings in the flesh in the studio. It's the combination of having something real with something unreal or virtual that makes the experience so powerful. Platforms that I've experienced, or even on Zoom, on VCs or webinars, are flat because whilst we are two human beings, we don't have any of the benefits of being together. Whereas in a virtual world, we can create those.
So it's more common. It's kind of creating that.
It's a very difficult thing to articulate, but the experience is much more real. You feel much more balanced, so there's lack of hierarchy, and because it's so progressive, it's exciting, and you feel like you're part of something innovative. It's an uncanny experience when you compare it to physical.
No, it's very, very interesting. I think, you know, we'll obviously post links when we kind of, you know, post up the podcast and snips. So it'd be great for people to have a kind of look at the demo and the product, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners or our leaders are thinking about, how am I going to do trade fairs? How am I going to do, you know, community workshops, that sort of thing. And I think it's great for people to have an option, as it were, because, you know, innovation is driven by necessity, isn't it? You know, and people react and adapt in the right way, don't they? And for yourself, I mean, you talk there about, you know, talking to people, talking to customers, and you obviously in your sales role, you know, is about getting those right solutions. You know, was there a lot of pushback? Did you know, can you talk about the sort of kind of objections that you were getting?
Yeah, so in the very early days, everybody was waiting. So there was a period of disablement in some ways, where customers wanted to wait. And then, I mean, some were very gung-ho and came forward with us at that time, but we had a sort of hardcore of the customer base that were keen to wait. We worked very hard on educating those customers, and we did trade on our original digital platform quite quickly. So we were able to continue to help our customers with their pipelines, because the biggest hit for every organization going into the pandemic was that their pipelines completely froze over. So we were able to, by June of 2020, be actively filling pipeline again on behalf of customers. Once we had traded the first of our digital summits back in June, we then had case studies we could use for the harder core who, you know, wanted evidence. It's really a lack of understanding and fear that stopped that transition, but we were able to really help them to experience it, to have demos of what we were talking about, so it wasn't just an explanation, and customers very quickly could see that they could fill the gaps and take action. There was a big sea change around September last year, when I think it was clear that things weren't going to ease or change quickly, and customers then needed to quickly make changes and pivot their organizations, or quickly address the challenges, which for us in our customer base was keeping their pipelines filled and moving forward, and actually, you know, delivering revenue into their organizations, but also that challenge that we've discussed, which was to communicate in an exciting, engaging way, you know, with 5,000 global employees, a huge challenge, but, you know, very, very important through the crisis. And the third one was to communicate with existing customers and partners. So investors, analysts, real influential stakeholders that could make or break, you know, your onward trajectory. So they were the three ways in which the education and then the experience helped to drive the results for us and for our customers.
And I guess part of it is celebrating those little wins.
Yes.
You know, celebrating like this move forward. We've done this, we've achieved this, and then keeping that communication going back.
Yeah, and with where customers are concerned, you know, the data insights that we are able to capture from a digital perspective, you know, far outweigh the physical. So very quickly through the experience, customers were, you know, feeling the benefits and feeling the power of digital compared to their physical experience. So as were our salespeople, you know, as were our production staff, all of whom were recruited into our TV studios, pretty fresh and new. You know, we had a huge influx of new operations experts, and now working with GCS on all of our salespeople plus operations. So there's a, you know, a big push now for extra talent.
Yeah, that's right. And how do you see the talent market? I mean, we're talking May 2021. The market at the moment is super busy. You know, that's the message we're putting out to all our clients. How are you seeing it now that you're recruiting? Are you looking for slightly different people than maybe you would have 2 years ago? Are you changing your parameters of what you look for?
Yeah, we are, and that's interesting. We absolutely are. So say 2 years ago, into our sales business, we would have been looking for a specific amount of time in a specific role, certainly B2B facing, you know, transacting with the C-suite. There would have been a very definite profile, whereas now what we're finding is that the most important skill from salespeople coming into this business is the ability to think and communicate in an agile and innovative way. Is the ability to be able to communicate to customers who may well be completely, you know, untechy, to be able to communicate to them in stories and demonstrate the power of the product. That's a different skill from you know, having a vanilla B2B salesperson who's risen through the ranks, you know, and has quite a fixed approach. So we're seeing people from the hospitality industry. We've been quite successful, you know, those that can tell stories in a better way, particularly here in the US. In Miami, we've got the cruise industry, which has obviously been, you know, hit pretty hard. But also what I'm seeing in our recruitment process, and I work with GCS, is there's been a lot of human beings who have had to pivot themselves and do roles they would never have dreamt of doing 2 years ago. Started little businesses, got involved in, you know, debt collection and areas that they would
selling
never
stuff through Amazon or something like that. You know?
And actually that's just as impressive to me, absolutely, than you know, the all singing, all dancing, sexy enterprise accounts person. And so we're finding that skill and that need to succeed is actually the secret sauce in a successful salesperson entering this organization now. And
I mean, it's really interesting what you say there about that kind of sales and commercial person, because I think now we live in a more technical industry, which is more digital. Then salespeople also have to be more digital, don't they? They have to be more savvy. They have to know what's going on. And do you think that that changes the way you interview them? That you have to be more are you still looking for the personality, or will you need to start saying, do you understand this augmented reality? What do you think about augmented reality?
So for us, it's not so much that we need them to understand it. What we need them to do is experience it and be able to articulate it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Be passionate about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So we help them to do that. Beyond that, they don't really need to understand the technology anymore, because the biggest challenge for us is to be able to articulate to our customer in civilian speak how simple this is.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not like actually you have to take those developers and do this, and it's going to take you 2 weeks, and you're never going to understand what's going on. It's like, it's simple, Mr.
And
Client.
it actually, what we've created is quite simple. It's a TV show, and the way you enter the TV show is via Zoom. That's it. You know, from a customer perspective, that's it. And we obviously get into a technical conversation with their technical teams and our technical teams, but from a commercial perspective, it's much more about being able to bring to life the story. From a digital sales perspective, which is the other thing you asked, the important thing is also, because all of the sales conversations are happening in Zoom, people need to be able to amplify their presence, because and that's important on VC, because you're not relying on the nuances of your physical interaction. So my observation is that people need to be able to dial themselves up somehow, not to be irritating, but just bring alive who they are and how they're communicating.
I can't get by on my 6'4" stature anymore, you know. I've got to go with my bookcase in the background.
That's right. You know, there's so much. There's ways in which we communicate that we can't do on VC. So the way, what we do have, our voice and our facial expressions and our body language, not to be distracting, but to kind of fuel the experience. Yeah.
And the last question I got about the kind of business before we kind of, obviously you've made huge levels of transformation.
Yes.
And I guess now you would see yourself as a leader in that particular market, right? Is the game therefore to stay ahead of the game? Because if now we create, like, I guess you have to keep putting money into development, because once you're in the tech industry, it's all about innovation, right? So you've got to keep pushing forward.
We do. So we need to keep pushing forward from an innovation perspective and from a user experience perspective. Super important. And finding ways in which we can bridge gaps for our customers. So I was on a call this morning with a refrigeration company, not normal for us, who want to be able to demonstrate their product in a virtual environment, which is a conundrum that's super interesting. But actually we can do that. They can ship their product to us, and we can do that on our platform, on our showcase platform. So we need to continue to innovate to find ways in which to plug the gaps. We also need to make sure that we can reach all markets, because that's a huge scale opportunity that we would have been slowed down in the physical environment. So we need hosts, so MOCs in different geographies. We need to work on our translation services. We have already evolved we now offer a fantastic added return on investment in follow-up meetings. So we're pushing our influence down the pipeline for our customers, and growing out 2 other areas, growing out our data insights that we can provide our sponsors, and working on tracking sentiment is another big piece that can push us forward and differentiate. So sentiment tracking throughout a virtual engagement is super interesting for attendees as well as for customers.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess, like, you can't just keep asking people, so you have to use kind of cleverness to see, well, where are they going? Are they engaged with the screen, clicking on things, etc., rather than it's very, very good. And I think, what it all comes down to yourself. I mean, what as a leader of the business and a leader of a successful business, what have you really learned over the last 12 months that you feel have helped you as a leader?
The biggest thing I have learned, I think, since the pandemic, since coming out to the States, is that we have to over communicate constantly. That actually, with huge change management, communication is the key with customers, staff, with developers, with operations. The crux of my role has been, over this last 12 months, to communicate. So messaging that is simple, telling stories, using examples, and celebrating all the wins, whether they're large or small. And keep, understanding that every human in our organization is going through something slightly different, but every human in our organization is absolutely going through something. So making sure that we keep our arms around the teams in a virtual world has been really important. Yeah, but never before have I, I've always perhaps under communicated. I've maybe, communicated the messaging and expected it to stick. Whereas now we repeat, we say in a different way, in a different forum, and make sure that everybody is understanding the way forward and that everybody feels part of.
Yeah, no, that's really, really exciting. And I guess that comes from feeling you're doing, like being really super passionate about what you're doing and feeling like you're doing something, different and out there and innovative.
And being part of something that is so innovative. And I think also being part of a business that took a big risk, there's something about the pride and being part of a game changer, that can change industries.
Tanya, I'm excited now.
We'll get you on the platform.
Just thinking about the outcomes and aspects of the way you can use it for recruitment and stuff like that. Really, I mean, you think about that, and I think it's we've seen it within recruitment. The changes that have been made from never doing virtual. There's no way I would ever take someone on to now. Everything's virtual and you would onboard someone virtually. The world has changed, and whether it's going to come back there, but I think hopefully GCS has done, I know GDS has done, is reacting and pushing that forward and making the best out of a difficult situation is the sign of a good business, isn't it?
I totally agree. Yeah, and we've worked with businesses. We did IBM's key customer annual event on our platform. So we had Arvind present keynote there. That's been very successful. We can do recruitment fairs. We've done learning and development, internal learning and development workshops or seminars gone, so where there is no restriction on numbers. Investor relations has never been so important, to be able to convey confidence and innovation in your organization, whether you're, a public company or a first round startup. So along with our core offering, which is pipeline building. So we've actually got now, 4 other ways in which we can
build that revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Tanya, it's been great to speak to you today. Thank you very much for your time. Great to be working with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. See you soon.